Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. Right then, I know there's no intro music this week, but there's a reason for that. There will be some intro music, but not as you normally know it. This week my guest is musical virtuoso James Harrison. He talks about how the most strict of piano teachers made him very defiant, working with a certain silver fox, and how he hopes to create a new vital addition to the world of pantomime. So please, sit back, relax and enjoy the latest Panto podcast. And yes, we need a bit of theme music, don't we? James? Oh, it's brilliant. How long have you been trying to do that for? So today I'm joined with Mr. James Harrison. Hello, sir.
Hello, Hayden.
Incredible beginning.
Good start.
That's a brilliant beginning.
Hope we keep it up.
Have you always found yourself being able to pick up tunes and just be able to dissect them and
Yes.
replicate?
And yes. And I don't know how. I can't answer it. I wish I could, because I've often had people ask me if they can have lessons, but I can't teach them because I don't really know what I'm doing myself. You know, I don't know, I've always been able to listen to something and do it. I mean, you know, that sounds a bit big-headed, but it's just the way it was, really. And my parents saw that I had something musically, and they thought the thing to do would probably is to put me into piano lessons to make a thing out of it. And I got put in with an old classical witch of a piano teacher, you know, the typical thing that you'd imagine, literally like the old woman who had a wart with hairs coming off it. And, you know, I wanted to go there and just go, you know, and instead, you know, I had to go all of that kind of stuff. And that isn't what I wanted to do. But my parents just thought it was the right thing to do for me, to put me into classical piano lessons, and I hated it. Hated every second of it. Have you seen Chicken Run?
Yes.
So she was very much like Mrs. Tweedy from Chicken Run, and her husband was petrified of her. It was so funny. She was called Mrs. Dial. I don't mind mentioning her name because I'm sure she's not listening to a Panto podcast. Mrs. Dial, I mean, doesn't the name just send shivers down the spine? But so we'd be in the middle of doing our scales, and we go, and I'd get one wrong like that, and she'd go, no! And she'd get my hand and she would put the right finger on the right key and go, it's this one! And it was just like, bloody hell, I just couldn't believe what, you know, and I was only, I don't know, I was maybe like 8 or something, and I really didn't enjoy it. And I think we'd be practicing things, and she'd just suddenly shout for the husband. She'd go, Mr. Dial, where's my tea? And he'd walk in and he'd literally be shaking, and he'd hand her the saucepan with the tea, and there'd be tea going everywhere, and he'd be like, here you go, Mrs. DL, here you go, and she'd go, thank you, now leave.
Oh, goodness.
Oh man, and I remember going home and telling my parents, you know, what it was like. I didn't like it, and they just, because I was naughty at school, they thought it was just me not liking the teacher, you know, just James again not liking his teacher. But it, you know, it wasn't that. She just had no natural feel for music or ability for music. And if anything, like, I think that probably is what spurred me on to go away. And instead of doing her homework, I'd find my own music and do things I wanted to do. So maybe if I had have had a better piano teacher, it might not have ended as well as it has, but I didn't like going there. I remember there was times when we'd get the book out and she'd give me a little example of all of the pieces, and it's that typical thing when a classical piano player plays something jazzy, it sounds very forced, it doesn't sound jazzy, you know. And I remember she'd be going through and she'd go, James, would you like to do this one, you know? Okay, what's the next one then? She'd go, not like that. She'd go. I think that's the one I probably want to do. That's more my style. And she'd go, well, we'll do the other one then. So, yeah, wasn't particularly inspiring. Yeah. And I remember once, like, just trying to make some kind of a relationship with her and going to the lesson and saying, do you want to hear something I've just been working on? And I'd do, like, a little jazzy, something like that. And she'd just go, that's awful. And then that was it. And that's awful, we're going to do contramotion scales today. I was just like, oh. And I was there for a long time before my parents actually realised that it was her that was the problem and not me. But like I say, good things came out of it because it inspired me to go away and find out my own way. And
your knee-jerk reaction.
Exactly. And, you say about my ear being able to pick things up. I remember watching like Disney classic films at home when I was a kid growing up, and most kids are watching Disney and they're probably like loving the princess or whatever, and I'd go to my mum like, oh, you hear what that bassoon's doing at bar 54? and I loved it. Like, I remember watching The Sorcerer's Apprentice, not Sorcerer's Apprentice, Fantasia, and Sorcerer's Apprentice, and that sound, I think it was a bassoon. And obviously I was so young I didn't know what a bassoon was, but I remember hearing that bum, 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 and I was like, oh, that's great. And then I'd hear, I think when I was 3, Hunchback of Notre Dame just came out. We went to Disneyland Paris as a holiday, and at the time everything was Hunchback themed. And I remember hearing that music because it's in France. There was an accordion, going, and then Topsy Turvy Day. And I remember hearing that sound, and so I didn't know what the sounds were, but I guess it helped associating sounds with so the bassoon is when people are creeping around, and then an accordion for in France, doing all that kind of stuff. The big church organ in Hunchback of Notre Dame. Remember that? All that epic stuff. And I guess watching these Disney classics, because the music's phenomenal, it really is great stuff, hearing the orchestra, and that's what I was taking away from it. I was so young, and I remember just being fascinated with waiting for the songs to come on so I could pick out what the trumpet was doing in this bit. I couldn't care less about Esmeralda or Quasimodo. I was just bothered about the music. And so when I was going to these piano lessons with that woman, just sucking the life out of me, and we weren't doing anything musical, we were just doing scales, and I was just like, no, I just want to be going.
Did it come from your parents then?
Interestingly not. My dad is can't sing a note in key. I remember in church, he would be singing along, and it was my mum's side of the family is slightly more musical, but them themselves aren't particularly musical, so didn't come from them.
Where do you think it did come from then?
It's a good question. I mean, maybe it came from, well, my mum tells stories of when I could barely walk, we'd go into a church, and the first thing I'd do, I'd just smell the piano and I'd run over to it. Back when I couldn't even reach a piano, and I was always trying to, get at the keys. And I don't know, it's just something that seems to have always been there. And they've got little videos of me when we're on holiday or something, and in a restaurant, and there's a piano over there, and I'm like 2, and my mum's got me on her lap, and I'm just kind of going one finger on the key, just basic stuff like that. But I've always been drawn to it. So I have no idea where it came from, but it's there.
What about then with school? Because obviously you said you were 8-year-old when you were going for these horrendous lessons.
Yeah.
And how were the school lessons progressing?
I didn't like school either. And no, really didn't like it. I think the problem is that everyone that you would think the music lesson would be the thing that I'd be excited about. Once a week you get music, or it's in secondary school anyway. And again, it's so hard to say without sounding big-headed, but I was probably a better piano player than the music teacher. and that's not... So I just didn't get anything from it other than frustration, because I was with all these kids who just wanted to be, listening to rave music or whatever, and I wanted to be exploring the instrument. And so secondary school music really wasn't for me. I didn't like school because I always knew what I wanted to do in life, which was music and shows and everything. But like I was saying to you earlier, when I was in school, you do your assembly hymn practice once a week or whatever, and they'd roll out the old granny piano player who would do "Give Me Oil in My Lamp" or something, and it was just painful. I remember listening to it and like talking to my friends next to me and saying, "Does that not bother you? The fact that she's going." And I just wanted to be going. And I remember saying to one of the teachers, like, could I have a go at doing this one day, please? Because it's the kind of thing I want to be doing. And actually, the killer for me was the school did Bugsy Malone, right? And that is all about jazz and that swing era music, and it's all about that feel and the excitement. And I remember whoever it was on piano was doing the intro to Fat Sam's Grand Slam, and it was like the straightest unswung thing you could hear. It's like, let me give you an example. Here's the intro to Fat Sam's, done by the old granny pianist. It was literally that, and I just wanted to be going. Anybody will soon walk through that door. It's meant to have that jolly feel to it, and it was just a killer. And so I was at school and just thinking, I thought this was meant to be good for me, but it wasn't. But yet again, it forced me to find my own way. I guess I'd go home and do things the way I wanted to do it, and I'd find music and discover music. When I was in college, I came across this, like a jazz club place, and I was only about probably 15, 14, and I managed to get a kind of relationship with them where they'd invite me to play a song with them in the set, as a guest. And then eventually I did 2 songs with them, 3 songs with them, until I ended up being in the band as like the house band in this jazz jam every week. And it was so good for me because I was in the heat of the moment. You can't stop and turn back. So you'd get people come in and say, I want to sing I've Got You Under My Skin, and I don't know what that, because I didn't grow up listening to that kind of jazz. I mean, I love it now, all the Sinatra and the classic stuff, but I didn't know what that was. And you'd get someone come up and they want to sing New York, New York or something, and I didn't know what that was back then. So there was nothing I could do other than I just had to listen to what the people around me were doing, and I'd hear that the singer's going, start spreading the news, and I'm listening to that and thinking, he's going. So what fits around that? Probably going, which is very much what it's like. And that kind of thing helped me because there's no turning back. It was properly in the firing line and you just had to go. And I made so many mistakes, but that's good. That's why I was there to learn. And I did that once a Wednesday for a couple of years, I think. And it really helped train my ears and helped me know what other musicians would do. And, that the bass player is going, so I should stay away from that because there's no point in me doing that because the bass player is doing it and stuff like that. It was really good for learning, really, and that was so much more beneficial than anything that school had ever taught me. And I had school teachers saying to not pursue music, you'll never get anywhere, and all. So I hope they're listening.
What kind of thing were you listening to then as a child?
Well, probably theatre kind of stuff, because I liked all of that. All of the my parents would bring me up watching the Oliver, the classic stuff like that, and a lot of these musicals are quite jazzy in the sense they've always got like a bit in it that has that swing kind of, very much my style, which I like now. And I'd hear that, but I didn't know what it was called, So when people asked me what kind of music I was like, I'd say like I think I like musical theatre. So you can imagine I went down with all of the kids in school, hey, he likes musical theatre. So I guess that was the kind of stuff I listened to, and stuff that was on telly, or stupid things like adverts that were on. I'd listen to the music behind them and come away like, oh, I like that, what is it? And then found out it was the Austin Powers theme tune, which is, what's that called?
Soul Bossa Nova.
Soul Bossa Nova, stuff like that. And then I'd go away and find, oh, there's this guy called Quincy Jones who did Soul Bossa, and then he's got a whole album of this stuff. And that's how I kind of discovered music, from watching films.
It was quite late.
Yeah, I guess it was, in that sense, because I didn't really know what styles were, really. Look, I think I do now. I hope I do now.
Let's hope you know. Radio-wise then, what did you listen to as a child? Did you ever listen to it much? Or?
I don't think I did. I think maybe Classic FM was on, maybe, in people's houses, but I was never a sit down and listen to, find something on the radio.
Listen to the top 40 or anything?
Never. No. I don't know why. I've always had the older musical mentality. The older kind of stuff's just always what I've liked.
What do you think now, though, about incorporating this into pantomime as well? The newest stuff.
Yeah, well, I like it because if I'm in charge of the music for it, I can do it in a way that's exciting, a bit more exciting. Obviously, you give the kids what they want to hear, One Direction or whatever that may be. But rather than replicating it, I think you can make use of it. So, like if the Prince is singing One Direction, I'll arrange it so that you've got trumpets doing like a fanfare thing around, because he's meant to be the royal prince, that kind of thing. Not that, but stuff like that. So it's nice having that creativity to still make the modern stuff modern, which people want to hear, but make it fit the story and the theme, So I kind of like doing that. So obviously make a lot of tracks for people. That was actually what I started off doing, because going back to this can be the last childhood memory. I'd go and see shows, or I was in shows. I used to do a lot of Amdram stuff myself, and the company used backing tracks, and they were horrific, a disgrace to the music. It was just so bad. It sounded like something you'd get out of a Christmas cracker, that plays a tune. And I remember saying to them, like, where are you getting these tracks from? And they'd say, I'm karaoke.com or whatever. And I'd go away. And then I found out, so there's a business here for people who make backing tracks, and they're selling them to these people. And I thought, if I had the right gear, I could probably do this. At the time, I had like my ancient Casio keyboard, which I've still got upstairs somewhere, and had like a 4-track recorder on it. And I'd literally just experimented doing little tracks and stuff. And then I'd kind of forced them upon these theatre people I worked with. They didn't want to know at first, but in the end, they started taking my tracks, and they weren't good, compared to what I do now. They weren't good at all. I listen to them now, and it's like, is that my work? But it's still probably better than the rubbish that they were using. But so I'd forced the tracks upon them, and then when I realised that actually maybe if I had the right gear, if I could get a job, I could save up and get good equipment that sounds good and everything. And I would approach backing track companies online, and I'd send them an email and just say, like, I'm James, this is what I do, and I'd send them some samples. And what I kept doing wrong was telling them how old that I was. So I'd say, like, hello, I'm James, I'm 15, I'm just getting into this. And then instantly most people either wouldn't reply because they think he's young, he doesn't know what he's doing, or they just don't trust you. But then one day I did get a reply from a guy called David Gainsford, who runs Paris Music, which is an online track company that they produce hundreds of tracks a week, I think. And he got too busy for a job, and he said, can we like farm this out to you? And it was my favourite things from The Sound of Music, and this was my first kind of ever pro job. So he offered me this job, but I didn't have anything to make the gear with. So I think I've talked my parents into lending me the money so I could buy the equipment, make my money from this track, pay them back, and then hopefully that would be the start of the business. And I did this track for him, and it went pretty well. And then he offered me more work, and that kind of grew. And he was probably one of the only people who didn't have a problem with the fact I was 15. And he said, doesn't care how old I am. He was just like, if anything, it's a good thing, because he was saying how keen I am to learn. So I made this track for him. I got more tracks from him. So then I could go to other people and say, look, I produce tracks for Paris Music. And then they take you seriously. And that's kind of grown. And now I do that off my own shoulders. jhbackintracks.com for anyone out there.
Oh, there'll be a link on.
Good lad, Hayden.
On the episode.
Yes. So from that, I've ended up doing some bizarre tracks for people, like really things that really utilise the fact that I've got that improv ability to kind of just go with it. I've done some really wacky things, like do you know Tam Ryan?
Yes.
Comic Tam Ryan. I did a baby shark thing for him for one of his routines, but he wanted it Bublé baby shark style. So like he does this routine where he's in a tux and he wanted it to start really seriously, so I give him the Bublé, you know. And everyone thinks it's going to be a proper Bublé song, and then we do that big build-up, and then it gets to the climax, and then he whips the tux off, and he's wearing a shark onesie underneath it, and then he goes into like a Bublé Sinatra version of Baby Shark. All of that, and I've like made the track for that for a full-on big band sound. I'll show it to you before you leave, and so stuff like that, And I think doing Panto has obviously really helped with that, because I've met people connection-wise, and the fact that silliness comes from Panto, you know. I've done something for a guy who was doing like a Harry Potter, well, I shouldn't say Harry Potter because Warner Brothers threatened him, a wizard school day is show at a train station, okay? And so basically it was like a little routine with the kids where they sing I Am the Music Man, but I work at Wizard School, you know, instead of what instrument do you play, what lesson do you teach? You know, I teach potions and all of that. And he said he wants a track that sounds like it's Harry Potter, but to that typical Umchar Panto-y thing. So I've kind of, snuck in, forcefully shoehorned in Harry Potter riffs. So instead of like a typical Music Man intro that would be maybe, and then they get there, oh, we work at da-da-da. I gave him like a... We work at Wizard School, and he used that at this train station for a good year or so, and I think it got quite a lot of attraction. And Warner Brothers cottoned on, and they sent him a message, and they said like any Harry Potter reference has to go, and they were gutted because like it's stupid really, because them doing that's not stopping anyone going to watch Harry Potter or buy anything Harry Potter. You know, there's 12 notes available to us, and I happened to go. You know, it's just an order of notes for one little sting. I don't like all that. But he said to me, look, just to keep them happy, can we kind of do something that sounds Potter but isn't Harry Potter? So I changed it to go... instead of that's enough. Literally, that's enough to keep them happy. And we did another one at the end where it just all that. And I think we changed that to like, you know, a similar style, and that's enough to keep them happy. So yes, only I've done that for him. I did another one for him where he did a pirate show at a theme park. And he wanted to do Old MacDonald Had a Farm with all the kids, but instead of that it was Captain Kidd, he had a ship, yo ho, all of that kind of stuff. And he wanted loads of pirate things thrown in there, so, you know, I'd sneak around it, you know, all that kind of stuff, and yo ho, a pirate's life, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I think, I don't know what the original question was, but the fact that the Panto silliness, and it's just so themed appropriately, like stuff like that. If I was doing a Peter Pan show with pirates and everything, you've got that element, and I just love all of that, you know, being able to mess around with songs and sneak in what people want that fits the theme. That's, you know, I love all that.
And things people don't expect as well, I'm sure.
Things that people don't expect, yeah. And a good example of that on Pantos that I've done, something that I developed with a comic called Scott Gallagher. I don't know if you've heard of him. Danny Postal mentioned him briefly on his podcast. He was the comic in Middlesbrough for, I think he did 6 years running, and he was so popular with the kids, you know, typical comic residency, and everyone loved him there. And we did a thing where, when he does his happy birthdays, where we soon realised everyone was getting bored of the typical happy birthday. So we'd do it in a different style every day and not tell him what it was going to be. And it was so cool because he'd then react to it. So, you know, we'd do like I'd literally be talking to the drummer. Tom Chapman is a guy on drums who I work with a lot, who is very much like me in the sense I can just look at him and he knows what I want him to do. I don't need to explain. He can just read my eyebrows and, and we have a real good connection in the sense that I can just do any style. I could end something in the most bizarre way and he'll follow me and he'll do it. And we'd literally get to the birthday section in the show and I go, I haven't decided what should we do? And he'd maybe go, let's do a Jackson 5 style happy birthday. And then Scott's going, right, everyone, we're going to do happy birthday. And I'd go, okay. And he'd go, hee, and he'd start doing the Jackson moves and everything. And then he'd sing happy birthday and go, happy birthday to you. Happy, and we kind of fit happy birthday around whatever style we do. And that's kind of developed over the years as well, because I worked with John Archer. He was the comic, and he kind of reversed it in the sense that once he realised that what we were capable of doing, he'd open it up to the audience. If it was someone's birthday, he'd ask what style they wanted their happy birthday singing. So that's great because it keeps me on my toes rather than just surprising the comic, surprising me as well. I remember we had a little girl who was 5 and she wanted it done in a Frozen themed tunes way. So I think we did you do know Love Is an Open Door? Yeah. It's got that and then he'd sing happy birthday to you, that kind of thing. And I love that. Involving the audience, but also involving John, and whose birthday it is today as we're doing this. Happy birthday, John. Hayden, what style would you like happy birthday in for John? Let's do it for him. You can, any style of music you like.
Parisian. Ratatouille style.
Right, I shame I haven't got my accordion down here. Happy birthday, John. I'm sure he won't be listening to this. He's got more important things on his mind today.
Today, yes. For those people who don't know, John is in the finals of Britain's Got Talent today. So
good luck, John.
We don't know if he's going to win, but
we'll be watching later.
Egging
him on.
Fingers crossed, John.
While we're on the John Archer subject, I've got a great story about him. We were doing 12 Days of Christmas, and it's a chaotic routine. Anything can happen, and anything did happen. There's a dancer, bless her, called Finley Guy. She was in the is it Stoke Panto? They did Robin Hood. I think she was made Marion in this year, but she was in it as the stooge. Has to do all of the, and who knows what was going on. We'd done the 5, whatever it is, and John got up and he went to get his prop out. And he did this, and John is a big guy for anyone who doesn't know, and he just elbowed her right in the eye, completely knocked her out. And I'm just going, waiting for her to come in with 2 smelly socks or whatever it was. I was like, I don't think she's actually going to come back in. But she did, and she got off into the wings afterwards, and she was just like, she had no idea what happened, and you should have seen her eye. I'll have to show you a photo, man. Straight to the hospital. She wasn't on for the second half.
I'm getting the sense that comedy is very important to you.
Yeah.
And combining that with music.
Exactly.
How did you think that began?
Well, you know what? I think because I've always liked... Again, I grew up with watching pantos. My parents would take me to shows, and I didn't know it was a panto. I just thought I was going to a show, and I love that silliness and the comedy. And I think what drove me to the whole comedy plus music is the fact there's so many musicians in the theatre world who I think personally are just so wrong for the job. They're classically trained people who just turn up and they read their dots and they have their head down and there's no kind of passion or energy in it. No involvement. Yeah, you go and see the big pantos and the phenomenal productions and everything, but the thing that always bothers me is that the band and the MD are just so out of the action. They're just buried away in the pit. And what's the point, having live music? And I just think you should involve the fact that I did amateur shows when I was younger, and I used to like acting and everything. So I guess I kind of like to combine it all. And I want all the musicians to kind of be part of the fun and the action and like get referred to, and that's something that Scott and John Archer and Philip Green, who I did last Christmas with, so good at involving me and the band, because they knew that I guess if they know we're up for it, they like to do it. We did a really funny thing with Philip. There was a song in the show that actually got cut. It was that Before the Parade Passes By. It's Barbra Streisand. And he came on to do his birthday routine. You know what I'm going to say, because you saw it. And after he did that, one day in rehearsals, he just wrapped his face up with sellotape, like trying to be Barbara with the nose crushed in and everything. And then he just came on and he went, "Don't tell me not to sit." And as soon as he did that, I went... And then he was like, "Oh, yes." And then he realised that I've got that ability to kind of go with him. And then every time in the show, he'd come on, "Don't tell me not to sit," and I know whatever. And then we'd do Happy Birthday, and he'd still be Barbara, and he'd go, "Oh, what shall we do it as today, James?" And then we'd do Happy Birthday to you in the Barbara style. And he was a loose cannon, isn't he, Philip?
He's another one, though. Do you find it's part of it is magical as well to try and get that whole gelling of the cast?
Yeah, definitely.
You said there about your drummer as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. So many theatre musicians I see who are just, they're theatre musicians, whereas Panto, I think, is all about going with the spur of the moment and being able to gel. And you see so many of these shows, the drummer's off in his booth somewhere, glassed up, and no one ever sees him, and he's got a camera with the MD on it, and you know what I mean? It's very separated. And I feel like I really want to change that. And I think it can be changed. It's just producers think that that's just the way music should be, but it doesn't have to be. If you've got people who are willing to go the extra mile and get involved in the entertainment side. I mean, it's like the fact you see musicians like glued to their score, just looking at the dots, and they're not interpreting what's going on around them. You don't get an actor coming on holding the script, unless it's Stacey Solomon. That's another story.
Cut. There you go.
But yeah, so that kind of thing. I feel if you know what you're doing and you can be involved in that banter, and like you say, it is a magical thing watching the gelling of all that happen.
Do you think that goes back to being trained kind of, or in the kind of trained with the jazz people as well? The fact that
yeah, I've never thought of that actually. Yeah, having to go where. Yeah, definitely, and that's, I guess a standard theatre MD maybe doesn't do that kind of thing, and they go to the Mrs. Dials of this world to be taught, and so they're so used to doing whatever it is every 60 shows, exactly the same, every single note, whereas I think, let's not do that, because we're Panto and we're improvising. We like a great example of going with it. Do you know Adele Silver? She was in Emmerdale.
Yes.
She was Snow White on the year that I worked with John Archer, and she was a real like naughty princess. She got involved in all of that, whereas the princesses are usually kind of, they just do the script and they don't really do much with it. I remember one show we had, I think all of upstairs was like a Spanish party, and they wanted to come and see what Panto was all about from Spain. And so John mentioned in his shout outs, we've got a group in from Spain, and they all went, hey, we're from Spain. And to them I kind of went all of that, and then it kind of developed. So when Snow White knocks on the dwarf's cottage door, she usually just goes or whatever, and I got her about it in the interval. I said, why don't you like pretend they're castanets because we're in Spain? And the drummer Tom got his castanets out and went on the door, and then usually when she's sad or whatever, my underscore is just typical, sad music, whatever. I kind of just make that up as I go, which I like to do because you can go with how they're feeling. Because of course there was a Spanish grouping, so I was going.
How do you do it?
Yeah, I know. And I like to think that little things like that, small things in the grand scheme of things, but they'll take that away. They'll think, we've been here and we've had the show kind of tailored to us. Same for the little girl wanting Frozen Happy Birthday. And they'll, the parents will go away, won't they? And they'll remember that, oh, that's nice. When we went to that show, they did Happy Birthday in the way that my daughter wanted it, and I love that. I think that's what it's all about, panto, rather than the typical theatre thing of musicians never referred to, not even mentioned, never mind involved.
It does make me sad in a way when you see things where occasionally, most theatres do, but occasionally they do forget about the musicians.
Yeah.
One exception where I never even realised it was real live musicians was Matilda.
Right.
But then they bring them on at the very end because there's no pit to see.
Yes, no pit to see, yeah.
Do you find that difficult as well when you're in a pit and people can't see you?
Yeah, I do actually, because it kind of feels like, what's the point? If you know what I mean? Because there's so many people, like you say, you wouldn't even know if you weren't musically minded. You wouldn't know. Half of the band could just be on the track. And if you're doing live theatre, so even if you can be seen a little bit in the pit, which is nice, which has been good actually in Middlesbrough, because yes, it's in the pit, but it's on the level of the audience and you feel involved. So it is very strange. Like, have you seen Chicago? Yes. That's the ultimate example for doing it right. Band on stage doing all that. The on track is all about the band jumping up and down, and I think that's kind of been an inspiration as well, because I saw that when I was younger, and I remember watching the MD jumping up and down and thinking, oh, this is great, isn't it? So if you ever see me do an overture and I'm jumping out of my seat, that's why. I got Chicago to thank for that.
Well, there's videos of you on YouTube as well, aren't there, where you're going a little bit manic, would you say?
Yes.
You get really excited.
Yes, yeah, I do, and I do I love it. I love that buzz. I feel like a little kid again in theatre. Talking of crazy YouTube videos, I think a good one is the thing I did with Double Trouble.
Yes.
So well, you've done a podcast with Double Trouble, so anyone who doesn't know them can go and have a little scroll back. But they are, very two funny guys, and I've worked with them quite a lot now. And so I play piano accordion for like celebration things like birthdays, surprising people and walking in. And I did an accordion show reel last year. And I don't know why I thought this would be funny, but I thought, you know what? I think we should get Double Trouble involved. And we did a little thing where them two are the two idiot policemen, and I'm riding my unicycle and I'm playing the piano accordion, and I'm like running away and they're chasing after me as the two idiot policemen, and I'm doing and they're chasing after me and they put me in prison. And it's just silly, I thought, why not just stick it on the end of there, make use of them. And that was funny when we were doing that, running around the streets of Middlesbrough doing this film. You'd think maybe it would turn the odd head to policemen chasing after someone playing Benny Hill on their accordion whilst riding a unicycle, but no one cared. It was just like another day in Middlesbrough.
You've just played there a little bit of The Laughing Policeman, Charlie Penrose. That's it's before my time, it's before your time.
It's a classic.
It is a classic, but you've had to catch up on so many great songs. How have you done that?
I think it's being around the right kind of people and the shows, and because my style is very much of that silliness. I think I've found them. I don't know how I've found them. There's so many, isn't there? That what's the one about a cup of tea? Right, said Fred. All of that kind of stuff. And when I talk to people of my age, I forget they don't know these things. And so I'll be doing a panto or something, and someone comes and does something. I think, this song would link to that. And that'd be really funny. Why don't we do that? And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, oh yeah. I forget that people don't know these old things. And I don't know. I've always had that older mindset when it comes to music. We did something with Philip Green yet again, where he had to go into the wings to get something to bring it out, and there was like awkward silence there. And just one day I did, the Pearl and Dean advert. Remember that? And then he came on and he started going da 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 and singing it, and then that developed into a thing. So as he went off to get the thing, we did like a build up. And then he'd come on da 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 da, and like little things like he'd do a joke and it wouldn't go down well and no one would laugh, and I'd play the Casualty theme tune. And he'd go, he's catching out whatever, or he'd use all these nurse terms that I didn't know, like talking about the joke. It was very funny, But again, like theme tunes like that, obviously Casualty's a modern one, but there's a lot of older ones that a lot of people just wouldn't know, and I think it's because I've played with such diverse people. a thing we do in the jazz world a lot to try and be funny is sneaking in little themes for well, I say we do it, a few people do it, a few people hate it. You get the jazz snobs of this world who do not like jazz being fun or silly, you know, they think it should be serious, out there kind of stuff. But when I did the Philip Schofield show, for example, we could talk about that in a bit if you want, but all the guys who were in that band, I often gig with them throughout the year, and every time we're together I always quote the This Morning theme tune, you know, that Philip's on ITV, so we'll be doing like a little jazzy thing just in the background restaurant, you know, and then I'll go you know, as a little homage to Philip, and things like that. And I guess, yeah, again, that's another modern theme tune, but there's so many themes from, like you say, ones from before your time, my time, that are just brilliant songs, really good. They don't do them like that anymore. Same for songs, really. Like, I don't think there's a lot of shows these days that have got the same kind of, for me, that impact of like an original Mary Poppins score that just makes you like fill up with orchestral. The new Mary Poppins, have you seen that? I liked that. I thought the music was nice, and it was really like, I guess the Sherman Brothers were involved in it, so they made sure it sounded like the old kind of stuff. For me, that was like a rare one that's come out. Like, I liked The Greatest Showman, I liked La La Land and all of that, but it doesn't have the same classic, you know. Mary Poppins Returns sounds like it was recorded 100 years ago, and I love that.
Who are the composers then that you really admire?
I really like Alan Menken, who does all that, the Disney stuff. I like the Sherman Brothers, and of course they did Chitty Bang Bang as well. A lot of people forget about that one. I love that proper old school stuff. I don't dislike the more like Andrew Lloyd Webber-y people, but for me, that's the stuff, you know.
Golden era.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know the John Wilson Orchestra? Have you ever seen them?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, they're phenomenal, and they do all that proper old MGM musical stuff. I remember they first did a prom at the Albert Hall, I think, like 2012, I think, and I was probably 16 or so. I remember they started up, and it was like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. Someone in our day and age that plays this music with a full orchestra, done so right, you know, that's what it should be like. And that goes back to that thing of like the old classical pianist who they don't have that feel or the emotion. And there's so many people, and especially in theatre pits, that I just don't think have that feel. And they might be playing all the notes right, but it just doesn't have the golden era feel to it, you know.
What about people like John Williams, people who've
all the film
created
stuff,
amazing little riffs, these earworms.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, that's great, isn't it? Like, really, really good. I love it. I did for the same people that I did that Wizard School song for. I think they had an event in a museum that was dinosaurs, and they wanted to do the hokey cokey, but in dinosaur style. So of course they said, feel free to sneak in Jurassic Park all over the place. So you're doing like the hokey cokey, and then suddenly I go. I mean, that was wrong, but you know, that kind of thing, and I love it. You know, it's those motifs, isn't it, and those little phrases that just are stuck in your head. They're just such good film music. I really like.
Do you find yourself dissecting it, or even making notes when you?
I think it goes back to that thing where I hear an instrument, and it's good for learning. Like when I'm making all these arrangements for theatres and shows, I can think, oh, well, the trumpet did that in John Williams's thing, so that must be the kind of thing that trumpets do. And so it's kind of good when I'm watching films. I'm always taking it in. Again, people are probably just watching the explosions or whatever, and I'm like trying to hear behind the explosion what cello number 3 is doing.
How many instruments do you play then?
I'd say, you know, properly, things that have keys on them, so you know, like an accordion, a piano, an organ. That's you know, I like to dabble in drums, but you know, I'm not a drummer. So yeah, I'd say professionally, piano and keyboardy things.
Anything you'd like to learn?
I've always wanted to learn the trumpet because I love that kind of thing, but an instrument like that is, I feel like I've left it too late, I think, to master such a thing. I'll just keep booking good trumpet players to play with me. It's probably the safest way.
What about then when you said about the organ and the keyboard? replicating sounds of those.
Mm.
What's your take on that? Because obviously you do the backing tracks as well.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, if someone doesn't have the budget to get an orchestra in, the only thing to do is get someone like me to make a track that can replicate an orchestra, which in some cases I think is better than booking like amateur orchestral players who are playing out of tune and stuff and hindering a show more than helping it. But of course, we talked about click tracks briefly earlier. I think that's a great compromise because you can then have 5 people in the band that have the oomph, all the instruments that have the exciting qualities, and then all the stuff that maybe people don't really realise, like strings and stuff, can be on the track, and that gives you then that full soundscape, but you're still seeing the live people doing it, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. And a lot of people use me for that kind of work, and I guess I'm lucky that I've got the ability to do that as well as my MDing and entertainingness, so it's kind of good all-around package, really, I hope.
You mentioned earlier on about going to see pantomimes as a child. Did you find yourself looking in the pit much?
Yes, literally as soon as the interval happened, my parents would lose me, and that's where I'd be. That's where they'd find me. Exactly. Yeah, I remember going to see stuff at I think it was Darlington and Billingham Forum were the 2 ones that I went to as a kid, and I swear I remember when you're coming in at the start, there was none of this playing house music of pop stuff. They were playing like atmospheric sounds, the kind of stuff of Cinderella or something. There'd just be loads of like glitter and to walk into, and I thought that was great because you kind of feel like you're in the story already, whereas now you're walking in and it's like crazy, crazy, crazy till we see the sun, and I don't like that. You get some people that play Christmas songs at least when you're walking in, so you kind of get in the vibe. But I'm sure I'm not making that up. I mean, I was young, but I definitely remember hearing the glitter and the magic and thinking, oh, we're at the theatre now. I like that. But yeah, you always find me at a pit. And actually, that brings us nicely onto like how I got my first Panto job. Are you ready?
I was ready for this one. That in a minute.
I know. Well, this is good. So when I was like a teenager, I would always run down to pits at the end of shows and try to meet the musicians, because I heard that's the only way to get in is by knowing people. There's no applying for the job. So I was quite nervous because I like to talk to people, but that whole tapping someone on the shoulder and saying hello, I want your job, it's quite nerve-wracking. But I'd always run down, in the playouts for these shows. Everyone leaves for some reason. I don't know why. Everyone gets up to leave when the band's doing like the epic playout. There was a time I remember people would wait and they'd clap after that, then they'd get up and go. But now people are, off to get the bus or whatever. But I remember running down to the pit at the end of the Joseph UK tour, and it was at Sunderland Empire, which is a lovely theatre. And I tapped the MD on the shoulder. And I said, I'd love to get involved. Have you got any tips, whatever? And so many of them before that just, fobbed me off one-word answers. But this guy, who's called James McCullough, was so helpful and encouraging, and we traded numbers and everything. And he said, well, why don't you come back tomorrow and you can sit in the pit and just see what it's like from down here? Isn't that lovely? And I'd never done anything like that. So I was like, oh, yes, please. And I did that, and he was great, and he showed, it was really nice to be with and didn't make me feel scared or anything. And he was really nice, and we kept in contact and everything. And I think it must have been like, I was 15, 16, 17, 18, maybe 4 years later, out of the blue, I got a call from him saying, I'm doing Sunderland Empire Panto this year. It was Peter Pan. He said, I'm getting married during the last week, and I need someone to come and dep for me as musical director. Can you do it? And I was like, you do realise I've never even done a theatre show, not even an amateur theatre show. I'd never done that. I'd made a lot of tracks and everything, but I'd never actually done theatre work. And he said, yeah, I don't care. I've listened to your stuff. I know you've got a good ear. You can do it in your way, however you want to do it, as long as it gets done. So what I would do is, when the show had opened, I went and I listened to the show. I'd sit in the pit and just watch him do it. And then the time came for me to play, and I was petrified. Sunderland Empire is a big theatre. I think it's 3,000 seater. 3,000. Must be. And on my first show, he was sat next to me at the piano so that he could jump in if there was a problem. So I was probably more nervous for that than all the people behind me. And I've got like, these pro musicians who have done this all their lives, and here I am like 18 or 19, and I've never even done an amateur show. So when we started that overture, I was just like, but luckily it went well, and I really enjoyed it. And then he said, right, so I'm off, bye. And then I did the next however many shows. And then at first I was trying to replicate what he did, because I thought that's what I should be doing. But then as I realised it's Panto, and I've kind of got my own way I do things, and I remember asking the band, like, do you mind if I just put my own kind of spin on it? We'll still do the same structure and everything rehearsed, but just little things. And they said, yeah, like, why not? And I ended up kind of adding things and we actually developed a few more jokes, and then the comic realised that, well, now that the usual guy's not here, this guy likes doing it. Because James is a theatre musician. He's great. He's a proper, he's done so many shows, James, and really encouraging man and everything. But he's not like me in the sense that I'm the jazzy improv guy. He's really good at what he does. And I couldn't do what he does, and we've got mutual respect for each other in that way, which is nice. So I remember when he came back after his honeymoon, and I think he got back for the second half, so he watched it from the back, and he came up to me, and then he's like, well, that wasn't there when I left. But it was great, and when he was away, I realised, well, actually I can do this, and people like doing it with me. So I thought, I'm going to explore this, and here we are, and I haven't not done a panto at Christmas since that. So if James hadn't have invited me back, if he hadn't have been so encouraging, and that's what you need. You need helpful people in this business. There are a lot of them, but there's also a lot of not helpful people. But
have you ever been told not to improvise?
Yes, I have.
To sort of hold it back.
Yeah.
How was that? What happened then?
Well, so I've done Middlesbrough for the past 5 or 6 years, I think, because I did that after that. And Danny Postal briefly mentioned how they're very traditional and old-fashioned there. And when I kind of took over the MD who did it before, he was the opposite of me, And I remember when I first did my exciting Happy Birthday, the theatre manager phoned the director and was like, he's playing Happy Birthday, but rock and roll style. What do we do about this? And they just had no idea how to kind of go with something like that, because they've never had it. They've done their shows how they do it for a long time. And they're good at what they do. And I really enjoyed doing Middlesbrough because I've met good people and we've had a lot of good banter and stuff. But they did not like me doing that kind of thing. But what can I say? I did it. I still did it.
And the audience
loved it.
The audience spoke.
The audience spoke. Yeah, like I'd tone it down for a bit, and then it would kind of just. I mean, how can I sit there when the comic's changing something, and how can I not react to that? When I'm dying to do it. I think it would be different if I thought that people weren't liking it. If it was just me doing that, but. The fact that I've got people on the front row tapping me on the shoulder at the end and saying, I've never seen an MD be so engaged and part of the show, it's brilliant. And they're like, we want more of it. I'm like, well, they don't want me to do that. And they're like, what? Just do it.
Go and tell them.
Yeah, exactly. Go and tell them, yeah. And there's been like reviews left on the Facebook theatre page saying like, the band even more exciting this year than last year. And again, Tom on drums, wouldn't be able to be as free as he is if I wasn't so open to that. And it's the same with me. Like if I had a drummer who didn't have the ability to, because drums is a real important one for that. All the falling over and all of that, and you've really got to have your wits about you to know where you are in the script and everything. And Tom, bless him, he had a baby this year on the first week when we opened. I don't know how he did it, but he did. He didn't have the baby personally. So he met his fiance on Cinderella there. She was Cinderella. And so now they've got baby. So, you've got to thank Panto for something.
Was it always then Panto that you wanted to do?
Well, no, it wasn't really, because I didn't realise that was a thing. And when I did that dep job for James, that's kind of what, when it hit home, I was like, oh, this is really suited to me. Or it could be, if if I can do things my way, it'd be really suited to me. And I've loved it ever since. And you wouldn't have believed, like, the things that come from it. You know, you've said before, people think they turn their nose up at Panto, or they used to, but now it's kind of more on the map or whatever. The first year that I did at Middlesbrough, the guy who was the prince, it was Sleeping Beauty, was Simon Schofield, and he's one of these guys who, I think he was Oliver as a kid in the West End. He was the little kid in Les Mis, and he's been Joseph in London, and he's kind of very in those circles. And he's really good friends with Philip Schofield, because I think he did Dr. Dolittle with him. Do you remember that Philip was the doctor?
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah. So everyone actually always thinks that Simon Schofield's related to Philip Schofield, but they're not. It's just a coincidence. But he came up to me at the end of the run and Sleeping Beauty, and we had so much fun together. Like, he was the cheekiest prince ever. Like, he'd have his mug in the tavern, and he'd fill it with water, and he's not meant to, and he'd come over to the pit, and he'd pretend that he's not realising what he's doing, and he'd just pour water over my head. And I loved that, because then I got him back with things, and he was a real cheeky chap. It was really good fun. And he came up to me at the end and he said, "Look, I'm doing this show with Philip Schofield, and we need someone to make all of the tracks, the arrangements, and we want the band to be involved in the banter and on stage and everything. I think you'd be perfect for it." And at the time I was 19, so I'd only done a panto really. So I was like, wow, let's talk about that. And I thought at first, people talk about things, don't they? And it never really happens. But this happened, and I spent like a year working on all of the music for that. And we opened there in Cardiff, I think it's St David's Hall, is it? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
David's Hall.
Yeah, and it was amazing. Like, it was like Philip's welcoming back to the stage, because he hadn't sung live on stage since his Joseph days, and he was petrified. Bless him. He's a master of what he does, but he's used to the telly. He's not used to singing live, and this is absolutely perfect because of the fact I was in charge of the music and they trusted me to do it my way. We had so much banter with Philip. So, like, he came out, and at the end everyone's egging him on to sing from Joseph, and he's doing Any Dream Will Do, and we started it off, and when the intro's finished, I close my... Simon goes to sing I Close My Eyes, and then Philip comes on and goes, hang on a minute, I think I should do this. And then the audience go wild, and he sings a verse of it, and then we get to a crash of drums, flashlight, colours faded into darkness, I was left alone, and we do the big build-up, and then he stops the band, and he goes, James, can we just stop this a moment? And everyone's thinking, oh, what's he doing? Like having a diva tantrum or something. And he comes up to me on stage, and he's like, I did it this way thousands of times. Can we maybe jazz it up a bit? And I'm like, can we? And then we go into this like jazzy Joseph, and he's like kicking his legs, a flash of light, da-da-da, and it was just so...
What was the
fun.
audience reaction?
Oh, it was mental. They were loving it, like jazzy Philip Schofield. It was so good. And he was all about the band here on stage, so let's have fun with them. And the guitarist would go over to him and pretend to knock him on the head with his guitar, and then Philip would duck. Little stuff like that developed. So very panto humour actually, and obviously loads of jobs came out of doing that job. But you think, if I hadn't have done the panto at Sunderland, I wouldn't have done the one at Middlesbrough, wouldn't have met Simon. Yeah. I wouldn't have
tap on the shoulder.
Exactly. Yeah. If I hadn't tapped on the shoulder, and if I hadn't have had a helpful guy. So it's all, all connects. So I've got a lot to be thankful for, James McCullough. Thank you.
Would you consider then going into albums with big stars to be able to do things differently? Yeah, definitely. Like, I've always said, like, I'm up for anything. I like to be a versatile musician, and nothing's too big of an ask for someone saying, "Can you make me music, man?" in a Harry Potter style, to let's go and do an album for a singer. And I'd love to do that, definitely. Anybody you'd really like to work with?
Ooh,
that you haven't worked with yet?
There's one that just will never happen, because I don't think there's enough time left in the world. But Dick Van Dyke. He's a proper, like, we've got the same musical interests. He does loads of like jazzy big band work. He's got his own little trio that he's touring with. He's how old? He's like 95 or something. He might even be older than that. And I just think, man, to imagine me getting to like back Dick Van Dyke, that'd be, because he's silly and he's got that light-heartedness and he loves the same kind of style. That would be great. But make sure this podcast ends up on Dick Van Dyke's door, please, Hayden.
Yes, I will do my best. I'll include him on his Twitter. Is he on Twitter?
He is, actually, yeah.
What was your first ever piano then?
Oh, like we had a proper bashed up, honky-tonk upright thing in the living room, and I guess I learnt on that. It was horrible to play. I remember the keys were so hard. I was trying to do slides, and I was like, just can't do it because I was like so young. So yeah, I guess that's what I learnt on, and then like my awful old Casio keyboard, which I probably did my first gigs on. So as much as I hate them, they trained me well.
Do pianos, speaking to somebody who's not at all musical, do pianos vary that much?
Yeah, they do. There's so many factors that can change them. So there'll be a lot of gigs where people will tell me that, oh, it's okay, you don't need to bring your gear, we've got a house piano. You cannot trust that. You just can't trust it. And I personally play my best on my own gear because I've set it up to respond to how I would play. The amount of people who've tried to get me to not bring my gear because it's like, it's fine, we've got a piano. I can't trust that anymore.
Is it like a pair of old trusty shoes?
Exactly. Literally.
Preferences then for pianos?
It's hard really because I'm much more with the gigs that I do. I'm doing like digital piano stuff rather than acoustic pianos. So I don't actually know that much about acoustic pianos. The one that we've got here, I was so lucky to have it because it was one that I used to do gigs on in Newcastle at a restaurant, and the restaurant closed and they didn't know what to do with it. That's why I said hello, and I managed to get a good deal on it. And I've just been very lucky with this one. It needs to be tuned though.
Sounds fine to me, but that's my ignorant ears probably. So. Pantomimes then, over the years, what's been your favourites?
Oh, probably Peter Pan and Aladdin.
Is that because of the musicals that you can...
It's so stylistic for the music. Whereas like I feel like something like Cinderella, yes, it's the story that everyone loves and everything, but there is no kind of theme musically. Like there's castles, so yes, I can go, but that's about it, unless I manage to be sneaky and put things from Spain in, but stuff like Aladdin, it's just so good for opening doors because I can arrange everything to sound Chinesey or have that Arabic feel to it. Peter Pan's brilliant because you've got London full of the start in London, then you're off to Pirate Land, and you've got Red Indian music. So many themes in Peter Pan for music, which is great. And I think the fact that Peter Pan was my first pro job at Sunderland, that's kind of nice. So that's always going to be one of my favourite ones, I think.
That's dear to your heart then.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And of course, talking of Cinderella, I'm off to do Cinderella this year at Sheffield, the Lyceum Theatre.
So you've gone from 5-6 years at Middlesbrough to...
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, real interesting change, because the other thing was Middlesbrough was so convenient because it was like 15 minutes from where I live. I was able to do my usual Christmas gigs around it because most shows were done by 8 p.m, so I could set up my other gear at a gig and literally shoot to it, and so it was always a good month for that. And it'll also be the first time in Panto that I'm not using drummer Tom, which is a real shame because obviously he's got the baby and he wants to stay around here, and I've always had that connection, and like I said, drums is so important, so it's going to be really interesting saying goodbye to him. He's going to come and watch it though.
Have you met the team you're going to be joining yet?
I've met a few people at the Panto Awards. I met Damien the Dame, of course. His podcast also can be scrolled down.
What about the music team then? Have you met your new gang?
That is me. So I'm in charge of that. So I'm currently working on that. So that
recruitment-wise.
exactly, yeah. So that's exciting. And obviously it'll all be my arrangements, my tracks, and I think a lot of the things that frustrated me about Middlesbrough musically, I'll be able to solve in Sheffield. So I'm very much looking forward to that new challenge. It'll be nice. And it's a lovely theatre, isn't it? Have you been?
Yes.
Yeah, it's so nice. Yeah.
The pit, is that quite exciting?
Well, yes, interesting. So we're not going to be in a pit. We're going to be in the grand boxes in the theatre. So I'm like on a left-hand side box. The drums will be over in another box. And the other musicians will be on like the upstairs boxes. So it's good for the sense that we'll be able to be seen. But it will be strange for the fact that people are so far away from me. We've all got our little cameras and everything. So it's kind of like best of both worlds in the sense that we're not buried away in a pit and can be seen for the interaction and everything, which is a big... they seem a very forward-thinking company, Evolution, and I've always said to them how... I've been chatting to them for years, so I'm really glad we finally made it work. And I've always said that I'm so passionate about the musicians being part of it. So the fact that we can do that, I think, is a really good thing. But it will be strange when I've been so used to being in like close areas with the band and, you know, being able to just whisper over to someone what style we're going to do something in. Now I'm going to have to get a big sign.
Have you ever done that before then?
No, I've not done the box thing before. I did, the closest I've done to that is I did a Wizard of Oz touring show with Shown Productions. You know, you went to see it when we were both there on the same day. Back when Ashley and Pudsey did it. And I think when we did Whitley Bay, they either forgot or didn't know how to open the pit or something, and they kind of put us up the back behind the audience, and we were like completely out of it. It was really strange because all the other venues we were in a pit right next to it, and we had I'd developed a lot of banter with people. Do you know Lloyd Hollett?
Yes.
He was the Scarecrow when I did it, and he was great. You know, he was really good for that band interaction because he realised very early, you know, that we liked all of that. And so he does Canterbury, doesn't he, for Evolution? Marlowe, yeah. So yeah, that was really interesting when we got to Whitley Bay and got to the bit with the interaction. I was like at the back going, "I'm over here."
When you're in a panto run, then some people find it quite strenuous.
Yes. How
do you find it?
It definitely can be. I guess I've been fortunate that for my Christmas ones, I've always been local. So I've always done the socialising and everything. I love that aspect to it because it is a nice little happy family when everyone gets on well, which they usually do. But yeah, it can be very draining, especially 3 show days. But I've luckily not had many of those. I think over the course of my 6 years in Middlesbrough, we've only had maybe 1 day throughout the whole run that's been a 3 show day. But I see that Sheffield has 3 show days every Saturday. So bring on that.
And the energy, where do you get that from?
I get that from hearing the audience, you know, as soon as you start that overture and you feel the buzz. And there might be times when I'm a bit tired, and it would be easier to just sit there and not be jumping up and down because no one's asking me to do that. You know, that's something I just like to do. But then I think I want to be just as good for them as I was to the people who saw it when I had full energy. So even if I am shattered, I'll still do all of that kind of stuff, and I like to get them clapping along and, you know, that kind of thing.
What about bad audiences then?
They're hard. They are really. You can feel it more for the comic. You know, Philip Green had it a lot this year with the school shows because a lot of them were just so young. They didn't know, like, half of his references. And you could tell he was just like, oh, you know, here we go again for that scene. And then he'd walk out and be like, hi, boys and girls. And we're just like happy as anything. But obviously we know what's going on backstage. And he just got to do it. But again, most people I've done it with are good at pretending they're not a bad audience. We just talk about it afterwards, you know.
Just... get on with it.
You've got to, haven't you? Yeah.
About
it is hard. And you think, like, a lot of the time, why are you coming here if you're not? Yeah, exactly. We had a really funny one a couple of years ago where the audience was so bad they just weren't responding to anything. That was when John Archer was on it, and I think a lot of them didn't turn up because like the bus was late or something. So the first few rows were empty, and so I thought, I know, I'm going to get out of the pit, and I went and sat in these 3 empty rows, and I was the audience for him, and I was giving him all of the responses, and he was like, "Yeah, see, that's how you do it."
It's having fun though, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
the main thing about it.
If you couldn't have fun, it'd be difficult, really difficult. If you weren't with like-minded people, and I've been so lucky that the comics like the fact that I want to get involved and do all of that. I had a funny one with someone in Sunderland who wasn't used to that, and I remember she came and pulled me aside and she said, that's not what you should be doing as an MD. You're just there to play the music. But then again, like, I took that for what it was and realised actually it's just her who thinks that. Audience love it, cast love it, so I'm going to keep going. And luckily I have kept going.
The last week, when you get that closure of the pantomime, do you find that quite difficult as well, the panto blues, as some people experience?
It's really weird because a lot of my work is me locked away in my studio doing tracks for other people's shows. So it's always so strange going from a job where you're with all these people, and it's such a people-y job, you with the cast, you're with the crew, who you develop good relationships with, audience, and then suddenly you get home on the first day of normal life, and I've got all these tracks to make that I've promised people, and I'm going from 2 opposite ends of the scale, all these jobs with people, and I'm locked away in a room by myself, starting from scratch. Right, what does the bass do? What does the drums do? And then building up the whole orchestra, and it's like you couldn't go for more different jobs. But luckily, because I do a lot of gigs throughout the year, that's like another thing I do, is which I actually run with drummer Tom. We run a thing called Q Music UK, and we like specialise in providing musicians on jobs. It's not like an agency, but it's more like a core group of people that we use who have all done proper jobs, like the Philip Schofield show. They're not just the typical like agency bands who are just pub players. They're people who have done proper stuff to their name, and we all pride ourselves on the entertainment and the showmanship factor, and the fact that we have the energy, we like to get in and can just go with wherever the client may need. That they only have the budget or space for 2 people, then the next week they might have the budget and space for 15 people, so we can kind of adapt. That's the whole selling point. And I'm often out working with band gigs on that, so it's not like I'm always locked away in the studio. So again, it's good to be varied, really. So you've got the best of both worlds there, because you're going out working with musicians and doing the studio stuff. So it doesn't take that long to get over the panto blues, because luckily I'm working in that sense, whereas a lot of people who do panto, like actors who maybe don't have anything else lined up for January or February, and they got to go back to doing whatever it is they might do that's nothing to do with theatre, I imagine that would be way harder.
As something of a veteran now at 25, do you find yourself talent spotting?
What do you mean by that?
As in musicians, do you sort of go, I like him, I like
Yeah.
this person or that person?
Yeah, and I think I'm very particular in what I want, that kind of matches my vibe and outlook and everything. So when I do get someone like that, I'm exactly what you're saying. Like I think I developed musically and career-wise from knowing drummer Tom, who we've talked about, because like he's one of my favourite. Obviously, I wouldn't keep talking about him. And we've kind of grown very close friends, and musically, that it's so hard for me to find another drummer who's got all those qualities. And there's a guy who I'm talking to at the moment who I think is really, really good, in the sense that he's very much like Tom. Being versatile is a really big thing for me, because you've got to be able to play all the different styles, because you never know what you might need to do, especially with me on the job. Whereas you get so many musicians who are really good at their one thing, whether that be rock or funk, but then they can't swing as well as they can do other things. So you've got to have that. So every time I see someone who I think, oh, they're good, I've got a little list in my phone actually of like people who I rate musically and for what jobs and everything. And I think I I'm like that especially with singers as well, because in my Q Music thing that we do, we need good singers as the front people for these bands who have also got the entertaining, showmanship to lead a gig, but also sing really well. So every time I'll do a panto or any show, if there's someone who really impresses me, I remember that, and I'll use them for other jobs. And I think because I do actually have a lot of work to offer in the sense that I do a lot of backing vocals on tracks that I do where people have got the budget to do that. So then I think, well, who did I last work with who was really good? This person, ask them to do it, and then they appreciate the work as well. And it's kind of like a big circle, isn't it? Because they do something for me, and then they'll remember that I asked them to do that. And that's how the Schofield thing came about, really. And so it all is very talent spotty, isn't it? In that sense, you work with someone that you like, and they've done a good job. You're going to remember them and want them back for other jobs. So, yes.
Do you think the talent show route is a good one these days or not?
Oh, it's interesting that. I think it's funny, really, because I've met some really good people before they did the Britain's Got Talent thing. So, I worked with Danny Posthill, and I think that was the year before he did Britain's Got Talent. So on the posters and everything, he's just Danny Posthill, who's a good dame, and we had a real laugh. Oh man, so many stories from him. Like, he briefly touched on some in your podcast. I could probably expand on them for you, but he was great, and I'm sure him doing Britain's Got Talent, and he got through to the final, didn't he? Has obviously helped him because it's just boosted his profile. But I would guess he'd still be doing as well as he is without it. I think people would have found him other ways. I know it's a massive thing and people love it, but what annoys me is the people who watch it and don't go to theatre. Their thing is they'll stay at home on Saturday night, Britain's Got Talent, but then they don't actually go to gigs or theatre. They just watch the telly, and I think a lot of people think that if you're on telly, that's the good thing. And it's that thing of like at the Panto Awards, can't sing, can't dance, that's the top of the bill. That's so true, because there might have been someone who was on a talent thing who can't actually do the thing they're being booked for, but the producers don't care, do they? Because it's a name and it brings people in, and that's really annoying. And then you get the good people, the genuine ones, the John Archers, who's on tonight. I really hope he does well, but I don't think he needs to, if you know what I mean. I think if for some reason he doesn't get through,
they've got a talent that shines through.
Exactly, and they've been seen doing it on, in front of millions on the telly, so that it's probably helped him already, and he doesn't even know it.
What would be your dream then? Because the musical director is kind of the forgotten about person. Would you like to see your face on the posters, your name on the posters?
I think I've always said I don't want to be famous, if that's the right word. I just want to be known and respected in the industry.
Yeah.
In the industry, yeah. And so when someone is putting a panto on at the Palladium, they think, well, we want to try something different with the music. Who should we go to? Oh, what about James? That would be nice. And again, I want to be. I don't want. My ambition is definitely not to be the faceless MD buried away in the pit. Who, like you say, people probably aren't even aware what a musical director is. People go into a show, they just don't care about those kind of things. They don't understand that the whole show revolves around music, and someone has to lead it and make it. So I think there must be some kind of fine line between like comic / music / performing that could still do all those jobs, but like you see a lot of bands on stage, like we were saying. I think there must be some kind of a role that could be developed that hasn't been done yet, that I could be involved in the show but still doing the music. Because I think I'd be really, if I was in the show again, obviously I did Amdram stuff, but if I ever did a show and I wasn't on the music and someone else was, I'd be like, I wish they were doing it like this. So there must be some kind of a role that can be there for an acting, funny musical director. There must be. I'm sure we can invent it.
Things have to start somewhere, don't they?
Exactly.
When you've got somebody like Bill Bailey, for instance.
Yes.
who is a very funny stand-up.
That's a great example.
Yeah. That's never been done before, really. I mean, you've had the whole Les Dawson with the piano and things like this, but...
Did you see Bill Bailey's Guide to the Orchestra?
Yes.
And that is just so me. It's just perfect. He does that thing where he shows you what the bassoons would do in something, and then he breaks it down, and the bassoons are actually playing "How Deep Is Your Love" from the Bee Gees and stuff like that. And obviously that thing where he does classical songs, Cockney.
Yes.
That is just so what I'm about. You know, I actually do one of the lineups with my Q Music outfit. We do like a human jukebox thing, so we'll be playing, and the audience have the ability to pick up maybe a prop, or they'll spin a wheel and it will land on a different style, and we've got to play whatever song we were playing in the new style while still playing that same song. And then someone can come up to us and give us a prop, like they'll put a French berry on my hat, and then I've got to get the accordion out and stuff like that. So I think that is very that Bill Bailey kind of, it's like a show in itself, isn't it? About music, but showing you how things work and how you can change. But yeah, the Bill Bailey stuff, the classical, I mean, he does loads of good ones, but I love that one where he's kind of, I think he's going...
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love it. And so he's proven that it can work, hasn't he? And it's a lot of that kind of stuff. I think he did one where he was doing the Doctor Who theme, and he said what it would sound like if it was played in Belgium in like a jazz club. He's going... and then the band kick in. You know, it's just so funny.
Do you think that there's not many of you because it's quite a rare talent?
That's
what I see it as. It's a rare thing.
Yeah,
to get this combination of music, humour, and improv as well, all thrown into one.
Yeah, it probably is quite a rare thing, and I maybe just don't see it as rare because I've never known any different. So it's always frustrated me when people aren't willing to do that. But then I also wonder how much of it is, you know, producers not even thinking about it because they don't know it exists, or maybe you get a lot of people who probably wouldn't like it because I guess you get the good old, like, someone's been a resident dame or comic in their venue for however long, and then a new MD comes along who's also got a bit of ideas and banter, and I bet, you know, some proper old hat people wouldn't like that. And you know, I've kind of experienced that in Middlesbrough, but I've always been able to tailor it back in my favour somehow. So yeah, some people are just not used to it, and people are definitely not used to it in theatre. Like, you get the audition pianist who is a proper, you know, give me the music and I'll play you what's there. And I think that's just what people are used to, that they just don't know any different. So maybe it needs more people to go and watch Chicago, I think, and see what could be done. Because I think that's a perfect example. Because the MD in Chicago he's mentioned and he's referred to, and so he's kind of there doing his job musically, but he's still involved. And like, I always remember when they start Mr. Cellophane, he's saying, does not anyone notice me? And he's looking right at the MD, and the MD's just conducting like through him, like he's not even there. That's the kind of stuff that I've always tried to kind of include in Panto, and I've been successful because of working with like-minded comics who have wanted to do that. But yeah, maybe it is, there's not many of us that maybe can do it or want to do it. A lot of musicians are happy to kind of just be playing their instrument and not mentioned or referred to, buried away in the pit. But not me.
So James, then, what inspired you to actually start the Q Music?
I think when doing all of these shows and realising that there is actually a want for the whole energetic entertainment vibe, we thought we should really do something about this, like package it up and brand it as something, rather than it just being, you know, my style of MDing. Is there a way that we can make that more accessible to people? So we thought what we need to do is we need to make some show reel videos that demonstrate what we can do. So what we've done is we've got very like-minded people, and they all happen to be local. That's just a coincidence, I think. But they're all very, very proper musicians who can really play their instrument and like wow you. There's a guy we play with on sax called Danny Allen, and he does this sax trick thing which I've never seen any sax player do, and you'll have to have a look. I'll show you later. It's really good, and it always wows an audience. So we thought, like, all these little things that we're noticing on gigs that are making people think we stand out, we really need to package it up so we can just send someone a website and say, here's what we do. So we did all these little videos, and we did one for a jazz band, and then we filmed it in different lineups so you can see it as a trio, as a quartet, as a big band. And then we've done the same for like typical function band stuff where it's soul music and rock and roll and that kind of stuff, so you can see it in different sizes, so then you know what you want. And you know, we did a job in Venice. Do you know Brother, the printer people?
Yes.
It was for their like 100th birthday or something, and we were on this island in Venice for them for a week, and they just couldn't believe that they'd booked a jazz band that also managed to get the audience going and entertain them. We thought, this is what we need. We need everyone to know that no matter what style it is, or however big or small the band is, that we've always got the connection. And I think that's what it is, connecting with the audience, because you get so many bands that they've got their set stuff and they'll go out there and they'll just sing, but they don't really connect, you know. So we really wanted to do that. And then we thought, well, everyone we're using here have got impressive credits. Like the person who sings has had a residency in Ronnie Scott's jazz club. Danny has done his things. I've done my Philip Schofield thing. So we thought we should be saying that everyone who we use have worked with high-profile people on shows, on tours, you know, literally all over the world. So make use of that. And then we've got the fact that everyone's played with celebrities, and one of the bass players we use, he's got like a list a mile long of all these people that he's worked with, but he's so humble that he doesn't talk about it. You'd never know unless you asked him, you know. He played with like Sting, Tom Jones and all of this, and it's crazy. But he doesn't mention it because I guess he doesn't feel the need to. But obviously we shoehorn that in on the website to show all of these people that these are the people that you're booking. And, you know, we can go out for competitive rates, and if you can't afford the big band, it's fine, because we can do it as a duo, and it'll just be as entertaining, just smaller, you know. So we've got all of that. And we did a little video, actually, we filmed at Sunderland Empire, where me and Tom, it's like a 3-minute clip where we're in the theatre, just nice surroundings, and we're explaining what cue music is, and that we've got all of these examples, so you can click around the website, and we show little clips from the most bizarre thing to me on a unicycle with the accordion being chased by 2 policemen to just in the background of a restaurant. So whatever it is you want, we can do, and that's what it is we're trying to get across, that we can do any style, any size, and it will always be fun. That is the aim. So I guess it's kind of what I'm trying to do in theatre, but also to events throughout the year.
Why don't you think there's many women involved with performance in music?
As in like bands,
As in
sense.
Bands and theatres.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it just is the way it is. I don't think there's any like, you know, women can't play. Like the Grumbleweeds had a great analogy for that. But it's interesting because when we went to Venice, there was a string quartet, and like 3 of those were women. And it's like, is that just a coincidence that there's more women violin players and cello players than there is woman trumpet, jazz, or drummers? Yeah, drummers is quite a key one, actually. You often see, if there is a female drummer on a gig, they always make a thing out of it. And but I think it's just a thing, like, that just happens to be.
It's strange,
yeah.
isn't it? And then you've got the old music teacher.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be something to
That
do
could be
with it.
something to do with it. Yeah, all the girls get frightened away from Mrs. DL. Do you remember the Wicked Witches theme from Wizard of Oz?
Oh, please,
I always used to go up the stairs when Mrs. DL's room was up the stairs, and I'd go up there going,
Sing the Flying Monkeys now.
exactly.
It's just very strange though that you don't see many women in the orchestras or in the pits.
I think on the more classical shows like the Phantom of the Operas, if you run down to the pit, I bet there's a lot of women on the strings and the more classical instruments maybe, rather than the rockier ones. But again, who knows why that is?
What would be your advice then to a young you?
Oh, well, actually, I had a young me send me a message about a month ago, and it really gave me flashbacks. It was literally the kind of thing I did. He found me through my backing track website, and he sent me a message and he said, I'm doing these kinds of things, and he sent me some examples of his work. And actually, it was probably better than what mine was back then, because he's now got the gear, because I know it was only 10 years ago, but the kind of equipment that's available now wasn't really when I was a kid. I'm only 25, but you know what I mean.
He's got shoes older than you.
Exactly. But he said, what can I do? And the advice is to do what I did, which is meet people and, be brave and run down to that pit or the stage door and find who it is you need to talk to. And that's the only way, really. I think you've just got to meet nice people. You probably will meet unhelpful ones too, but eventually, I met loads of I say unhelpful, just they were nice and everything, but nothing ever came of it. Whereas when I met James McCulloch, something did come from it. So I think you've just got to keep prodding people, but don't hassle them. There's a fine line, isn't there, between saying, I want a job, I want to meet you just because I want a job. You've got to be nice and friendly and everything, get to know them, share an interest, but also you still kind of do want work from it. But there's just a good way of doing it, I think. And I think just meeting people is the key. Go to things. Find the jam nights as well, because I play at a jazz jam in Newcastle at the Jazz Cafe, and you'd get people who are doing the shows at the Theatre Royal, and they've got a night off, so they'll come to do the jazz jam, and they'll get up and do a song, and then you've met someone, and they might like the way you've played for them, or you might like the way they've sung for you, and that's what you've got to do. You've got to meet people and accept making mistakes as well, because when I played with that band I told you about, where I played every Wednesday night, I was awful. I listened back to videos and I think, I can't believe I was doing that. But without those experiences, you can't kind of tailor your craft really, and meet people and just do it. Throw yourself in at the deep end, definitely, because you can't stop then.
Is there anywhere you'd like to play still?
Yeah, I think there's lots of like, I'd love to do the Albert Hall, because that's one that I've not done. I haven't even seen anything there actually. I'd love to go. Have you?
Yes.
Yeah. Of course you
Sorry.
have. You've done everything. No, I'd love to go there. I'd love to play there, because it's just one of those places that so many people have played at. But
surprisingly small. It looks huge on the telly. Like the Palladium looks massive. Yeah. And then when you go there,
they go all those shots where they're like as far away as they can get, and you go there and it's not. But theatre-wise, I've been fortunate that on that Schofield show we did some really nice ones. Edinburgh Playhouse was a really nice one. I think that's one of the biggest in the country, actually. And that was really nice. That felt big to be in as well. So yeah, I think I'm happy for the theatres, but I would like to do the Albert Hall. That would be nice.
And what's your preparation before a show?
Any show in specific you've got in mind, or
just any show where you're literally half hour before the performance, before curtain up? What are you doing? I've never. I mean, I think this probably stems back from my hatred for Mrs. DL. I've never really been a warm-upper kind. I mean, you get a lot of people. You'll go down to the pit and you'll see them doing all of their warming up. I've never really done that. I kind of just plough in when it's time to go and hope for the best. So depending on what it is, I think I'll be a bit more. If you're on a show where you've done it a few times, you can be eating your food 5 minutes before starting. But when we did the opening night of that Schofield show in Cardiff, man, I was nervous. I mean, I'd spent a year working on all of the music, and Philip was nervous for him as well. So everyone was like, man, and the fact that I am the person that starts the click track as well is quite a nerve-wracking thing, because Philip's little speeches in the show changed every night. So he'd be announcing it's time to do the Beatles bit,
And he'd go, so we have the Beatles. So it's like, oh, well, it's obviously time to start. And I'd start. And he'd go, yes, and the Beatles have done... And I'm like, no, stop, quick. And I managed to stop it just in time because he had more to say. And then he's like, so now we leave you with the Beatles. I'm like, right, now it's time to go, you know. So I can't remember what the question was, but...
About your preparation.
Oh, yes, prep, yeah. So I guess, depending on what the job is what I was saying, that I'll do jobs like proper backing a singer where you can't really do any prep because singers are particularly known for not knowing what they're doing, so you kind of got to go with them. And I work with one who often just changes the key halfway through and they don't realise, so, you know, luckily we're there, and then, oh, they've changed key, and then I have to follow them, you know, because you've got to, you know, you can't keep doing what you're doing if they've changed, because everyone just looks at the singer and thinks that we're wrong. But, you know, bloody singers. There's many jokes about singers, isn't there? So yeah, some gigs like that, there's no point in doing prep. You get a lot of bands who I would say aren't proper musicians. They're people who have learnt how to play songs, and that's what they do. And they'll rehearse every week. You know, I've done dep jobs for there's a really funny show called The Crooners, which I depped on a couple of weeks ago at Billingham Forum, and it's like a big band thing and it's the story of three of the remaining crooners, you know, Frank Sinatra, and it was quite nerve-wracking because I'm playing with a big band, but they're not going to rehearse for my sake because I'm the one replacing someone, you know, so they just turn up and do their bit. So it was literally like throwing in at the deep end there, and it was another one where the band are on stage, very much part of the show. So it's the first time I've done it, and, you know, it was hard, but I enjoyed it, and I like that, getting thrown in at the deep end. Sometimes you can prep too much.
What about your favourites over the years that you've worked with?
Oh, well, I'd say that in the unnamed territory, it's a shame really because he deserves to be named, but Scott Gallagher, who was the comic in Middlesbrough, I think is one of the best comics going. He's just got that. He's got all the qualities, I think, and he always had everyone in the palm of his hand. He'd come out and do his "Now then, Borough." You know, he didn't have to say anything, and instantly they were all in the palm of his hand. The year that he left was when John Archer came to take over as comic, and it took him quite a while to get them to warm to him and accept the change. A lot of people don't even look at the poster; they just expect Scott's going to be there because it's like his residency. So when he wasn't there, people were like tapping me on the shoulder in the interval and saying, "So is he coming out in the second half then?" I was like, "No, he's gone." And they're like, No, he's here." I said, "No, he's gone. Honestly, look at the poster." And then they looked at the poster and saw that Scott's not there. He's done Blackpool Winter Gardens the past few years. He's from Blackpool. He's a radio presenter as well. So I think when he got that job, he kind of had to move with that. But Scott was definitely a favourite comic-wise. I'd love to work with him again. I think one of my favourite baddies was Nasty Nick, John Altman. Man, he was good. He was really funny. He was great for the banter with the band, actually, like threatening us, like if we got his music wrong, you know, he'll feed us to the giant kind of thing. That was great, and again he realised that he could get involved with us in that sense. Do you know that he's a bit of a wants to be a singer, John Altman?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, he did like a number one in the charts with someone a couple of years back, and I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called Wild One, and it just come out when we were doing Middlesbrough. So he was always like at the bows at the end. He was always telling people to get on iTunes and buy his song. And that year we did a jam. Something that I've done on Pantos every year, and I think it's a great thing to do. And hopefully I'll be able to do it in Sheffield. I don't know, but I always have like a jam party night with the band and the cast, so anyone who is in the show who hasn't had a chance to sing, we can just like let our hair down and just all have a nice drink and just jam. And it was so fun because you never know what's going to happen, and it's good for us as well to really properly play, because you know you might not get to do that in the show, so it's really good to let steam off. So we did that the year with John Altman, and of course he got up in this club to sing with us, and I think he sung like a blues song, and he did a jazz thing, Ain't Misbehaving, as well. And all these people, he's a very recognisable character, John Altman. You know him if you see him. So when you're walking down the street, people were saying, you know, there's Nasty Nick, where some people maybe who were in Panto, who are the name, you wouldn't know if you passed them on the street, but he has the face, and he got up in this club and everyone was like, bloody hell, there's Nasty Nick from EastEnders singing, and he had them in the palm of his hand. He was doing call and responses, like going, when I say hello, you say ma, hello ma, and all the audience are going, hello ma, because that was obviously his thing in EastEnders. And so like we did that with him, and he loved it. And then in the show the next day, he referred the fact that we're all a bit, because we were out jamming last night and stuff like that. I just love it. And the following year I went to go and see him with the Chuckle Brothers, and he was in Wolverhampton. Is it the Grand Theatre?
Yes, Wolverhampton Grand.
Yeah, lovely one. And he was doing Peter Pan, so he was Captain Hook. Man, that was a good show. I remember him coming on one of the twins' ships that was like on fire, and it was great. And he was doing his typical thing, his Nasty Nick. He kind of, everything he says is growled like this, and he's very, I'm John Altman. And so the theatre was full, and he came out and he did his thing when he got on the ship, and he went, I want to see you all get back to work. That includes you two Chuckles and Mr. Harrison. And the Chuckles just looked at each other and they're like, what did he just say? And he went, that's right, including Mr. Harrison. And like, obviously no one had a clue what that meant, but I was in the audience. He was doing it for my benefit. And it was just so funny, like the look of puzzlement in the Chuckles' face. It's like, Mr. Harrison, what's he talking about? But then he introduced me to them again at the end, and you're the Harrison that he's talking about. But I used to go all over the country to see the Chuckles when I was a kid, and I've got so many photos. I've got like a little collage that my mum did of me seeing them all over the place, and it was lovely showing them that photo. So now I've kind of grown up and I'm now working in the industry. I used to love watching their stuff. So when John Altman introduced me as like his dear friend, that was really nice. That gone all the way to Wolverhampton, and I went out with them afterwards. And so that was the last time I saw Barry. So I'm glad that I managed to do that. Definitely.
Lovely guys.
Yeah.
So much experience as well with them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's come to that part of the podcast, as you well know, where I ask you your dream Panto cast. So you could be in it, you could be musical director, you could choose...
I could be the invented thing that we were talking about.
You could be the invented thing that we were talking about. You can choose the theatre.
Yep.
And cast can be alive or dead.
Right. So think... It's got to be between Peter Pan and Aladdin again, but I've got to choose one. So I think I'm going to choose Aladdin, because like I say, so many musical things I can do with that. So that would be, I think, the theatre. I know everyone's all, the London Palladium, we love it, but I would rather just stay local and go to one of my favourite theatres around here, and that is Theatre Royal in Newcastle. I don't think I'll ever get that one though, because I can't see them two going anywhere anytime soon. But I think Theatre Royal, I love that. Lovely theatre, so I'd probably want it there. So what have we got in Aladdin, character-wise? We've got...
Aladdin, wishy-washy.
Right. So I think for Aladdin, I would actually go with Simon Schofield, who I was talking about, because he would do it in that proper cheeky chap way. It wouldn't be just reading the lines and being the prince. There would be an element of humour there, but not in a sense like being the comic, because you can get too many people trying to be the comic, I guess. But I definitely would want that. And I'd also want Scott Gallagher as Wishy Washy. That would be good. Again, going back to earlier, you know who my name would be? Guess.
Go on.
Dick Van Dyke. Yeah.
Who else?
He could be the emperor. He could be like the Emperor of China, because in Mary Poppins, he was the old banker guy, wasn't he, in the original one?
Say Widow Twanky then.
Oh yeah, that would be good actually. But I can just imagine him as the ditzy old emperor, but with typical Dick Van Dyke quality to it, and
sort of prime Dick Van Dyke time.
Prime Dick Van Dyke time, yeah. I wonder if we could ever get him to do that. I bet that would cost a lot.
Just a bit.
Yeah. But I think that would be good. Chinese policemen. We might as well have the two who were chasing after me on the accordion, so double trouble for the Chinese policemen. That would be funny. And I think I would I would be involved in it, but maybe they would be chasing me on my unicycle and accordion, and maybe I could be like a Chinese busking urchin, playing the music. That could be how the MD's involved. We could be an on-stage band in Chinatown, and I'm always busking in places I shouldn't be, and the policemen have to chase me off. That can be my inclusion.
And then you've got your widow twanky and your princess.
Princess? Do you know Sophie Evans? She's in Wicked at the moment. She did the Dorothy thing, Andrew Lloyd Webber's Find a Dorothy. She was in the Schofield show the second year we did it, and we had a real laugh with her, and I think she wouldn't just be the wet princess role, she'd be naughty with it in a nice way. And obviously she's West End star at the moment, so that would be good, I think. Yeah, she'd be good for that. The first year we did the Schofield show with Danielle Hope, who did win the Dorothy thing. So I think, again, it was just a complete coincidence. The second year we did it, went to Sophie Evans, and she came second, I think, in that. By the way, just while we're there, Wizard of Oz territory. One of the first ever big backing track jobs I did was producing the full show of the Wizard of Oz for another backing track company who didn't want to do the work, so they offered it to me. And they offered me, bearing in mind I was in like secondary school, they offered me £900, and I'd never heard of money like that. So they said, we'll do that for you to make it, and we own the rights, or we do a 50-50 split for the rest of your life. So I probably should have done that one, but being young, I just thought, £900, and it ended up taking me about 6 months to make it. So, if you actually broke down the money, it would be awful. And then that was the year that Andrew Lloyd Webber did his Find a Dorothy programme. So every primary school and school in the country was doing Wizard of Oz. And where were they buying the tracks from? The guy who I could have had the 50-50 deal with. And he's still making a lot from it now. And I don't own it at all. So yeah, that's annoying. I learnt the hard way there, but at least I learnt.
Never do a buyout.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we've done the princess. Who else have we got?
We need our widow twanky.
Oh, that's hard.
We can go for Abanazar.
Abanazar could be a John Altman, I think. I think he'd like that. He'd be good. See, I'm going with people who I've worked with because I know that I'd enjoy it. People always go for the celeb names, don't they? And people they'd like to work with, but other than Dick Van Dyke, the one I haven't worked with
yet.
Yeah. I'd love to. The dream team for me is people who I've done it with and loved. So, why would I not get those back?
Perfectly fine.
Exactly.
So we need to press you on your widow.
We do, don't we? I think John Archer would be a good Dame. He's not done it, I don't think. I think he's always been a comic. But his style of comedy is very shouting at the audience, telling them why they're wrong, and that's very Damey, and he's got the appearance for the Dame. I think that's a compliment, John. So maybe he'll get Dame after tonight's performance.
Oh, let's hope he does.
I know. Do you think that would be good, Dame, for John? I think so.
I think he'd make a very good Dame, actually.
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
So yeah, there's the Aladdin lineup at Theatre Royal.
And is that a 50-50 split then between?
Yeah, 50-50 split. That's what I'll take.
Well, James, I tell you what, do you want to...
Shall I play you out?
Would you mind playing us
I would not mind.
James.
We'll do your Panto podcast theme, but let's do it in a different style. What style of music would you like?
Your favourite's jazz.
Oh, okay.
So that's a bit...
We'll do a ragtime jazz kind of thing. Okay, here we go. Ha! The Panto podcast is done. Yeah. Thank you, Hayden.
Oh, thank you.